Hello and welcome. Today's video will cover the disassembly, diagnosis, and repair of the Starcom Starwolf single-man starfighter, a supplement to the StarMax bomber. This video spans a 2-week period of the full breakdown and repair, so I thought, and then re-diagnosis and full repair of this little toy. Let's get started. After I had repaired it the first time, I came back to it a week or so later, finding it in the same, problems it had before. So oiling it didn't fix the problem. After removing the 4 screws from underneath the toy, it's best to disassemble it right side up. Removing the top half of the vehicle, you can see the chair comes out with it, at least for this particular toy. Since I've worked on it before, I oiled almost every surface of the inside of the toy, trying to determine what is wrong with it. Last time I worked on it, I oiled every surface, and it was working when I left it alone. Let me show you some parts. In here, there is a spring, which helps with the nose coming down when the toy is deployed. In addition, on the side is the trigger release for the cockpit canopy. Cleaning off some of these items, I will put them aside, and I'll show you this, linkage. It's a pivoting linkage which interacts with the back end rack and pinion. This linkage has a spring at the very tip of the nose of it, which helps push against the linkage as it interacts with it. As I disassemble the toy, I'm going to be cleaning off spots where I had placed oil before, thinking that maybe lubricating it more would help it along in its unfolding. This rear section where the thrusters go, this is the trigger release button. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, this particular toy shares 2 commonalities from 2 other toys from this line so far. The Laser Rat shares the same gearbox as this toy, and the rack and pinion almost totally looks identical to the Shadow Raider toy that I had repaired before. Removing the gearbox from the toy, it shows that it's working fine, so I'm still in a bit of a conundrum as to what is happening. When I unfold the wings to either side, I can tell there's something keeping it from doing a full cycle. I'm going to have to disassemble this again and see what is going on. Removing this brace, which makes up the assembly, let me clean it off here, you can see the rack and pinion that it holds underneath. It's a dual rack and pinion, one rack for each wing, with the pinion having two gears attached to the axle, which, just like in the Shadow Raider, are pushed together by a very tough spring in case one wing needs to slide beyond the other. They can do so. But like in the Shadow Raider, this spring is very, very hard, so I don't see how it can slide past it without breaking the plastic rack in the process. So again, I think it's a little bit of over-engineering with plastic gearing pieces. But let's keep on looking. Here I just removed the pinion with the two gears that slip past each other by the compression of the spring that's underneath them. And just like in the Raider, they slip past each other. That way they can be at same angles when you fold the toy together. But also I can see there is a fracture of that large gear that's on top. I think I know what's going on now. When I initially put the toy together thinking that I had fixed it, I had oiled all these parts. When I put the toy aside for a week or two, having wound up the gearbox, the oil seeped in between the axle and this gear that has the fracture. So then the gearbox, over time, made that gear slip on the axle, which you can see now that I can move it freely by grabbing the clamp with the needle nose pliers. So I guess I'm gonna have to glue that gear on, just like I did with the Shadow Raider. But I'm gonna have to find also the proper placement of those two gears when they interact with the rack and pinion, because I'm thinking since that top gear has slipped, the spring has pushed it up and it's no longer interacting well with one of these racks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish the disassembly and wiping down of all these parts that I oiled. And then I'm going to have to do a thorough cleaning of the pinion and the gears, making sure there's no more oil residue on them before I glue that large gear onto its axle. I'm going to go ahead and get into my junk bin here and pull out some gun cleaner. And that really should get rid of the oil really fast. After brushing each gear with this cleaning chemical, I'm going to go ahead and blast them with the air gun and get everything off all at once. And I'll put them aside and let them dry for a bit. And then we'll begin the process of gluing that gear onto the axle. So now that I've reassembled the gears uh, back together and formed the pinion, I'm going to put it back in between the racks and see how high it is in relation to its placement. And I can see it's pretty high. It's barely even touching the teeth of the rack. So that might be the problem too. Not only does the gear slip, but it's not even making contact or barely making contact with the rack. I'm also thinking when I glue this, I'm going to have to put some pressure on it because I need to counter the force of the spring that's at the bottom of this axle. So I'm going to have to do some creative gluing. Wish me luck. So, as always, when gluing these little gears to the axles, I gotta file down or scratch up the axle so that way the glue adheres to the gear and the axle, giving it like a fresh area to adhere to. So here we go. Oh, look, it feels rougher now that I've roughed up the axle. Feels a little bit rougher, so I need to get yep, I need to get a better idea. So this is where it is now. See how it has just a little bit of the axle protruding out from the top of this pinion assembly. So I'm looking at it. Yeah, it needs to be much lower. Okay, let's get to gluing. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to put like a bead of glue at the very tip of this axle, and then kind of twist down the large gear onto it and kind of muscle it into the place where it should be. And hopefully I'll be in the right spot. I should have gotten my pliers ready first before I put the glue on, but I gotta work fast now. Gotta figure out how to put that gear on before it dries. Okay, using the pliers, I'm gonna use the pliers to help me hold down and put pressure on that gear so it counters the spring. Wow, looks like it worked out good. Man, that glue dries fast. Yeah, that gear is on there now. And the placement looks really snug. It looks good. I hope it's just not too snug, but it looks good enough for me. I'm going to remove the pinion and I'm going to show you how now the axle protrudes more out from the top than it was before. I think it's good. Hopefully this toy won't have any more trouble. Okay, so let's begin the reassembly process and hopefully we won't find any more problems. Well, it hasn't done much. In fact, it's a little bit more pronounced. That I wonder what that is. It's so weird. Not sure. The wings have the same problem, like as if a tooth is catching. Let me put the motor in. I'm gonna wind it up, and then we're gonna see how it unfolds. Again, it's doing the same thing again. Oh, there it let it go. But this time it's a little bit more pronounced. I'm gonna put the top half of the ship on it and see, because I can get a better grip of it this way. Let me, hmm. It wants to unfold. I'm wondering if that small fracture has something to do with the unfolding of the toy as well. Now that we've placed the gears in the proper spot, this lag is more pronounced and I can even hear it. Let's remove this brace from the assembly and see where that fracture on the gear is, where the placement of the fracture is. I can see the way the pinion moves. It moves in a clockwise direction. And I can see the fracture ends up hitting the rack that interacts with this top gear, which is the rack in the rear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the fracture on the other side. That way that rack interacts with a full set of teeth that won't interact with the fracture itself as it turns clockwise. Maybe that'll get rid of this problem. And I can see yes, it does. It gets rid of the problem. So placing the fracture way before it interacts with the rock is what's going to fix this problem as well. Okay, nice. Okay. Nice. We have a full cycle. Very good. Let's resume the assembly process and complete the toy. Wow, this has been another successful repair. Hopefully what I discovered here will help you in solving the problems with your toy. Please remember to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the initial breakdown of this toy. Thanks for watching.